Today we are, like I said, we're looking at the card, or Pat does this beautiful series of cards, and the card that we chose for today was the card Beyond. So we'll be looking at that today and talking about that. But as we begin to ground ourselves in the energies of the space that we're creating and co-generating, we want you to think about this question for just a few seconds and to allow this question to kind of come into your DNA, and so that we can feel the embodiment of what it means that to be like, who are we beyond our stories, and what does that even mean? We each have different interpretations of this. And today I'll be sharing my interpretation. Pat will definitely be sharing her interpretation. And then we hope to hear from all of you. So I'm just going to allow us to have a few seconds to think about who we are and who we are beyond our stories. And we'll come back and visit this question because I think right now, it's a really important time to be thinking about the stories that we're creating and co-creating with one another. So, Mom, I'm going to have you kind of recap for us what we discussed in the last session. And for those of you who weren't here, you'll get the feeling and the spirit of what we spoke about when we were meditating and thinking about the card and the word surrender.
Okay, so a month ago, or over a month ago, we were together and to look at the word surrender. And as I'm thinking of Christina's words, I'm also trying to think in terms of bringing the word surrender into the discussion for today. So let's look at the word surrender in the terms of what is beyond surrender. What does going beyond surrender look like in our own lives? So here is a reflection from last time, but let's look at it also as a transition into what we're going to be talking about today. Suffering is caused by wanting what you don't have and having what you don't want. The Buddha teaches. What remains then when our wants are surrendered? Rumi answers this question. When you do things from your soul, a river runs through you, a joy. Joy remains. As our wants fall away one by one, and we are no longer distracted or driven by our own desires, we encounter our soul, our authentic self. We come full circle as the stonecutter did, back to the beginning of who we are. And in this rediscovery, we experience the joy of knowing that we are enough, unfettered by what we once thought we needed, unhampered by who we thought we should be. And from this enough, a joy pours out like a river, because no matter where we are, no matter what we are doing or saying, we are aware that we are in the presence of our soul, that divine spark that is who we truly are. And we are conscious that everything begins and issues forth from that unimpeded source. And as the vocabulary of the wants and the shoulds begin to evaporate, what is the language now of this new way of being in the world? This new way of looking beyond. Being unconditionally present with yourself is an act of love that unlocks the door to your deeper resources: strength, acceptance, peace, compassion, forgiveness, humility, gratitude, giving. These become our new words. And like the stonecutter, what is the gift we came into this life to share? What is our task? For everything on earth has a purpose, and every person a mission. So perhaps today we could take this, the word surrender, and look at it in terms of what does that look like beyond now? And so okay, I'm going back to you, Christina.
Okay, thank you, Mom. That was beautiful. So when I was reflecting upon the question, what are we beyond our stories? One of the images that was immediately evoked in my mind was, I went back to 2012 when I was recovering from cancer and going through and recovering from breast cancer. And I was telling my mom and my Aunt Pat that what I remember doing was, I was feeling my broken body and with all the surgeries and the treatments. And there was one moment where I felt so, my body was so broken, but I felt so alive within. And one of the things I did, I was listening to music, which I do a lot. And one of the things I did was I revisited the song Anthem by Leonard Cohen, which many of you know. But I'm going to pick out the stanza in here that really spoke to my heart in this moment of having cancer. And I actually wrote it on the walls. I took a paint pen and wrote it big on my wall in what I call my convalescence room. It wasn't the master bedroom or the main bedroom. It was another room in the house that was converted for my recovery. So I wrote on the walls, ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And I think when I was thinking about beyond and thinking about it in terms of this song and that moment in my life, it brought me to present day, where I've been thinking about my students, one in particular who just took her life last week at the age of 22 and had graduated from our program, was already teaching. And unfortunately, she dealt with a double loss in her family. She lost her mother and her brother within 1 week in July. And she reached the brim. And when I'm talking about the brim, and this is reflective of the question, who we are at the brim of that which is beyond our known or lived stories. And I'm connecting her story with my own of having cancer, of reaching this moment of feeling like I was teetering on the brim between something I knew and something that was beyond me, something that was also scary and terrifying to me, that beyond that existence that I did not know yet. And feeling my body cracking open physically with all of this, with all the treatments and the surgeries and the tubes and everything. I felt that, and I'll show this picture, it's all interconnected. I felt like the Kintsugi pot, like cracked open. I've been brought to the brim and I could barely stay together, right? And yet there's this beautiful light. And there's a line in the poem that my mom wrote about the joy of being like a river pouring out, no matter where we are and no matter what we're doing or saying. Like, to me, that's what this light is. That's reflected also in Leonard Cohen's poetry. It's the light that kind of keeps us together when we're on that brim of not knowing, of knowing what we've been up until a point, but then we're pushed to this limit And this limit is a very real limit. And that adage of saying that God doesn't give you what you can't handle. Well, sometimes God gives you just about only what you, I mean, like gets you to that limit, right? Like where you're going to crack. And sometimes you do crack. But when I think of my student, when she cracked open, she didn't have, and I love this word with the Kintsugi, this golden joinery, this light. For some reason, the light, she didn't understand how that could help her piece the cracks back together in a way. And I'm so sad about that. I that's my prayer to all of us, is that we find the light that can bring us whole, and bring us back together when we've reached that point of breakage and fragmentation. And so for me, beyond, I know this is really profound on a Sunday morning and it's intense, but my Aunt Pat tends to bring me to these moments through her questions and through her cards that make me reflect on the deepest moments that I think are so important for us to share as we think about ways to move beyond that which we don't know, which we are all in right now collectively, but to do it with light and knowing that even in that moment of fragmentation, there is the light that can mend and bond us and keep us together, and to really trust in that. So I think I'm going to stop there so that we can just maybe take a moment of reflection before we move on to my Aunt Pat's story and her interpretation of beyond. So just take a deep breath. Inhale through your nose 4 seconds of breath on the inhale and 8 on the exhale. And 2 more times, in breath. And 1 more time, and in breath. Thank you. I'll bring it to you, Aunt Pat.